Hi, I'm stopping by for a quick hello. We read an account in Genesis 11, that speaks of a people who moved from the east to the plains of Shinar, and they decided to build a tower with its top reaching to the heavens. That tower is what we know as the Tower of Babel. This is a prideful people that decided that they could elevate themselves above gods, and this audacity isn't unheard of in the history of the world. There were kings and tyrants who used to compete to see who could build the highest structure. The Egyptians and the Romans called their Caesars and their pharaohs God. Uh, but God had one of the most temperate and creative responses, I think, to the people who were wanting to elevate themselves, and that is that He multiplied their one language into many languages so they couldn't understand each other, and they found the ones that could understand each other found each other, and nations were formed. He sent them actually in a direction to save them from the terror of having a one world power, a terror that they didn't even know that they were setting up for themselves. And then God assigned lesser supernatural beings to stand in for Him. Those are the rulers, the principalities in the heavenly places that we read about in the New Testament. That those were the gods, the lesser gods, the false gods that they were touting in Mesopotamia, and they could find out what it was like to have them. In fact, they do. They cause all sorts of trouble for the nations. So when God called Abram out of Mesopotamia, He essentially was making a way for those rebellious and disinherited nations to return to Him. And that nation of Israel that He formed from Abram, Israel hadn't even been formed when Babel happened, then that would be the nation that He would use as an example nation, and it would be the one that Jesus came through, who makes a way for nations, all nations, to return to God and under His authority. Today, we need to acknowledge that we're living in a time that is in stark contrast to who God is and what He expects of His people. It's reminiscent of Babylon, if you will, and it seems to me that that final Babylon that's spoken of in the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, describes somehow the same things. Those people sacrifice preborn babies. Well, they did that in the Old Testament too, and all through history. And children of all ages, they terrorize them, they sacrifice them. We don't want to think about it, but they're being trafficked. People, in fact, will drink the blood of terrorized children. They cannibalize. This is something we want to close our eyes to, but we must not. This is happening even today. It rejects God's omniscience, is degenerate, and it believes it can take over God's creation. So we're living in a time where there's a segment whose desire is to build a Babel tower all over again in the form of a centralized authority. And is that authority governmental or financial or religious or technological? Maybe all four, maybe more. Or maybe there are people already doing that under the radar. Hey, what do you think? So maybe we haven't recognized Babylon in our own day-to-day lives because of what we thought or were taught it would look like. It's different from what it is. How can we stand then? We don't want to be part of that Tower of Babel. We don't want to be those people. Well, look at where you put your money and how you use it, because money speaks to people who value it. Prayer, the spiritual part of life is far bigger than the physical part of life, and yet we flip it sometimes and we confuse it. So the power of prayer is huge. Also, returning good in place of evil, which will flip it on its head. And that's the kind of people we want to be. Also, we are supposed to stand and not desert our post, whether our post is at home or in our community, in our churches, in our place of employment, and certainly in our nation. We stand. So in this time of Babylon, will we support building something tyrannical, or will we be part of the kingdom of God? I'll see you next time.